Hello there, friend. It has been a long time since I made a video, and I've missed you. And I've missed making videos, and I've missed working on Goldie. The intention was that this video, the next video in the lineup, would be the video where a new motor goes into Goldie. And this is not that. I don't have the motor yet. It has been in progress for months at this point, and I do not have an ETA for when I'm going to get it. But I couldn't let any more time go by without making an update. The problem is most of the updates I see on YouTube are boring because it's a guy like me sitting and talking to the camera for half an hour. I can't put you through that. That would also be a very boring video for me to make. So instead, we're gonna do something that I think is very exciting. While I tell you what's been going on, I'm going to clean my garage. Huh? Come on. For years, I've been presenting an image of a guy with a clean, tidy garage. But the reality is, unless I'm working on a project, I tend to just let the mess accumulate. Junk piles up on the workbench, tools get taken out and not put away. I work on something small and don't clean up after myself. It's not that I don't like cleaning. I find it to be a very zen activity. It's simple, rewarding work that gives you time to think. The hard part for me is getting started. I can always think of something that's a higher priority, so I default to putting it off for another weekend, and before you know it, the entire summer has gone by. But one thing that's guaranteed to motivate me to tidy up is if I'm having company over, and making these videos is pretty much the same thing as inviting guests into my garage. Because of that, I'm grateful to everyone who's been asking for an update lately, because even though you didn't realize it, you were motivating me to go out there and clean up. So I owe you a Goldie update. Where do I start? First of all, a little background if you're new. Goldie is a 2007 Corvette Z06 that I bought just about a year ago. At the time, she was bone stock with around 50,000 miles, and I was fresh off the experience of driving a couple of different generations of Porsche 911 GT3. Everybody knows the Corvette is a tremendous bargain in terms of performance per dollar, and in my mind, the C6 generation is the sweet spot in terms of being a lightweight driver's car that still packs a punch by modern performance standards. But comparing spec sheets and Nürburgring lap times fails to tell you how a GT3 communicates so well and instills so much confidence on the racetrack, whereas the C6 gets the job done despite feeling a bit bouncy and numb. Now, there is a huge aftermarket for Corvettes, and I wanted to find out whether upgrades that I could install at home as an amateur mechanic would transform the driving experience to rival that of a modern GT3 and deliver faster lap times to boot, still at a fraction of the cost of a 911. I wanted to build Goldie into a GT3 killer. And things were going well right up until the point that I blew the motor at the racetrack. The 7-liter 500 horsepower LS7 engine with its 7,000 RPM redline has a bad reputation for dropping exhaust valves, and that's exactly what happened to me. I hadn't originally intended on touching the engine at all because my stock 16-year-old LS7 boasts just as much horsepower and a far beefier torque curve than even a modern GT3. But with the motor blown, I needed a plan for a replacement. And after sharing some of my thoughts and hearing from many of you in the comments, I realized that before I could come up with a good plan, I needed to define my goals and my priorities. So after much thought and discussion, I realized that my goal is to give Goldie the LS7 that GM should have built. In my mind, that means a few things. Number one, the aluminum block LS7 with its titanium parts, high revs, and 427 cubic inches of displacement really defines the car. And as much as an LS3 represents similar performance at a far better value, it's not the same thing. For me, the car needs an LS7, or if not literally an LS7, it needs 7 liters. Number two, it needs to be reliable. In my mind, C6 Z06 values would be a whole lot higher if the LS7 had a reputation for being bulletproof. Unfortunately, they are known for being fragile. I don't want to have to lie awake at night worrying about whether Goldie is going to blow another motor, so reliability is critical. And number 3, it needs to be affordable. The value for money proposition is part of the ethos of the car. In 2007, a 911 GT3 cost 50% more than a Z06. And while K-Tech will sell you a 700 horsepower Track Attack 427 crate motor for $45,000, that wouldn't be in keeping with the spirit of my build. GM stopped building LS7s a while back, but while you could still get a new one, it would cost about $20,000 to buy it and have it installed at a dealership, so I want to keep the total cost well below that number. In the process of defining those goals, I realized that there are a couple of things that are not a priority for me. More power is not a priority. I'm not opposed to a little extra, but I don't want to develop a case of while I'm in there and replace every single stock part in the pursuit of more power, only to start snapping CV axles and run out of cooling capacity. Higher redline is also not a priority. I read an article in the spring about a destroked LS7 that could easily rev past 8,000 RPM, but ultimately I don't think it makes sense for me to chase some kind of exotic novelty engine build and the expense that goes with it just for the sake of being able to brag about my redline. So the LS7 that GM should have built has 7 liters, is reliable, and is relatively affordable compared to the original engine, and it makes a little bit more power. The question then became, how am I going to get this engine? Initially, I wanted to try my hand at building it up myself from a bare block. I called up my good friend Bobby, who longtime viewers may remember as the guy who designed and built his own Ariel Atom replica. Bobby told me in no uncertain terms that he was a big fan of the build-it-yourself approach, and he emphatically offered to come down and help me with my build. Despite how easy Bobby made it sound, I was a little intimidated, but I liked the idea of pushing my limits as a mechanic. Even so, I thought it would be smart to get a second opinion, and so I sat down with my friend Trent, who has also built his own engine. I was planning to make a video about this conversation, but my camera was out of focus, and so sadly, the world will miss out on Trent, who I think of as the 6'8" Joe Rogan of the Corvette world. Trent warned me that to do my own build, I'd need to get a good machine shop involved, and that small mistakes in assembly could lead to a spun bearing or other major damage. And that warning made me realize that as much as I want the satisfaction of building it myself, I don't know if I could handle a huge setback after a small mistake. But Trent offered up a different solution, which was to buy a built short block. A short block consists of the block and the rotating assembly, which is the crankshaft, connecting rods, pistons, etc. Everything that requires careful technique, tolerances, and machining is taken care of. You just need heads, valve train, and accessories. If I chose that route, I'd still be able to assemble the rest of the motor and install it in the car myself. So the short block is kind of a stepping stone between doing a full build from a bare block versus buying a complete crate engine and popping it in. Trent also told me that a lot of companies have short blocks on their shelves ready to ship, and so it would likely be a faster route, and it was important to me to keep the momentum going on the project so I could keep making videos. So I called around to places that offer 427 short blocks like Blueprint Engines, LME, and Texas Speed. And based on the recommendation of a viewer, I also got in touch with K-Tech. Some of you will know that K-Tech built the LS7R race motors for the C6R Corvette race cars back when Goldie was new, and whereas a lot of LS7 builders are focused on engines for the street or for drag racing, K-Tech has a long history with road racing. When I spoke with Zach at K-Tech, he said that they had a refurbished LS7 block that they were planning to build into a short block to put up for sale on their website. He said that they could customize the build to meet my goals. And as much as I liked the idea of doing my own build from scratch, if I'm honest with myself, I'm not at the point where I'm really excited to learn all the intricacies of different options with pistons and connecting rods and compression ratio targets. An expert shop like K-Tech can apply years of experience and tell you this is what works and will get you what you need. They also agreed to build me a set of refurbished LS7 heads since one of my heads is trashed. What we'll end up with is an honest-to-goodness, reliable LS7 that I can take to the racetrack without fear and make about 600 horsepower at the crank, all while retaining a stock-looking engine bay. If I feel the need to pursue more power down the road, the engine will have a lot more potential, but for now I think that will be plenty. And cost-wise, it will all come in well shy of the $20,000 GM would have charged to install a new LS7, and I'll have a warranty from K-Tech, something I wouldn't have if I'd built it myself. Of course, there's a catch. The original estimate was that I would have the motor by the end of August, assuming all the parts were available. That was too much to hope for, and the pistons chosen for the build were not available, and the months have been ticking by. Honestly, I'm not too concerned about it. K-Tech has a great reputation, and we live in an era of supply chain issues, so it's understandable. I'm not worried about them holding up their end of the bargain, plus I've had a lot of other things keeping me busy. Had I known it would take this long, I might have decided to switch gears and dive into my BMW M Coupe project, but the reality is I just haven't had time. And that's actually a good thing because I'm in the process of starting a business with a really great group of people. We're not quite ready to talk about it, but I'll hint that it's automotive in nature and there is going to be a big YouTube component, which I hope at least some of you will follow once we get it up and running. And what's really wild to me is that I met almost everyone who's involved in the business as a direct result of this YouTube channel, which by the way recently turned 3 years old. I don't know what the future holds for this channel, and I'm not sure if I can find a way to post videos regularly moving forward. But building this little corner on the internet where strangers can hang out in my garage and share their insights with me while I share my automotive journey, well, it has been the most transformative period of my adult life, and I'm excited to see where it takes me from here. Thank you all for coming along for the ride. I'll see you next time.